Welcome back to another video on the channel. So we have reached the quarter-final stage of the Men's US Open. If the first week was anything to go by, then we've got a fantastic conclusion to this event. I spoke a little bit about this in my women's quarter-final preview video that, I think Frances Tiafoe made a fantastic point, saying that, despite the absences of Federer and Nadal and team initially being a hindrance to the tournament, and they probably still are, it's opened the doors for the younger players to come through, and we've seen the emergence of Felix Auger-Aliassime and Carlos Alcaraz on the women's side, with Venus and Serena being out. We've seen Emma Raducanu and Leila Fernandez, just 18 years old, reach the quarterfinals, and it's fantastic for the future of the sport, and just to see new players on the big stage and attracting the crowds and enjoying the moment. It's brilliant to see, and this is the most I've enjoyed a Grand Slam in a lot of years, to see the new players. There's been some fantastic matches, 5-set deciders, brilliant tie breaks, and yeah, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable US Open so far, so hopefully it continues and we have some fantastic conclusions to this tournament. So I'm going to preview and predict the four men's quarterfinals, starting with Novak Djokovic against Mateo Baratini, a repeat of the 2021 Wimbledon final, which Djokovic edged in 4 sets. So first off, talking about the world number one. So we know with Djokovic, he's still on course to complete the calendar Grand Slam. He would become the first player to win all 4 Grand Slams in the same calendar year since Rod Laver back in 1969. If he could achieve that feat at 34 years old, it would be quite incredible, and I think it would, be very difficult to argue Djokovic not being the greatest of all time. Now he's had the most weeks at world number one. He would be top of the Grand Slam list. He would be the only player in the current era to have completed the calendar Grand Slam. And I said at the start of this week, last week, before the tournament started, that it would be very difficult for somebody to beat Djokovic. I think he's a player that thrives on pressure. Pressure creates diamonds, and Djokovic is a player that seems the bigger the occasion, the more people write him off, the better he gets. We saw him at the French Open, beat Rafael Nadal and fight back from 2 sets to love down against Stefanos Tsitsipas. At Wimbledon, there was doubts whether would he be fatigued. Was he at his 100% best? And I could say, I'm not sure he was. I don't think Djokovic was at his absolute best at Wimbledon, but he got a nice draw, produced a very good final performance to beat Berrettini. At the US Open again, do I think Djokovic has been at his best yet? Absolutely not. I don't think Djokovic has played anywhere near his best, to be honest. He's dropped 3 sets so far, which is quite unusual for him at this stage of the tournament. But we've seen Djokovic in years gone by that in the earlier rounds against players that he doesn't play as much, he does sort of struggle in the opening set or two to get a read, to understand the opponent. But when he takes the legs and takes the soul, using Andy Roddick's quote from last night, then he just seems to dictate, and Djokovic is arguably the best 5-set player of all time. He's an unbelievable problem solver. He's got incredible fitness, incredible mental strength, variety to his game, which allows him to switch momentum in matches, and when he gets hold of matches and gets a lead and gets in a run of games, he's very difficult to peg back. He's just relentless, chasing greatness, on the verge of creating history, and again I think it's going to be very difficult to see him stopped. Last night, Jensen Brooksby, a player that I had never seen actually play before, was quite incredible. The shot making he produced in the opening set, when I don't think Djokovic actually played particularly bad, was unbelievable to watch. But as I said, once Djokovic worked his opponent out, found the flaws in his game, switched momentum of the match in that second set, then he was always on the way to victory. So up against Matteo Baratini, who I thought was actually nursing a little bit of a thigh injury. I thought I read before this tournament, but I don't think there seems to be any strap in there, so looks like Baratini's 100% fit. And again, I think he's a player that might be feeling it a little bit from the Wimbledon exertions. Didn't quite produce his best last night. Otte got injured in the 4th set, which saw Baratini cruise to victory in the end, but it did look to be heading to potentially a 5th set, which would have been interesting. Berrettini's a player that I think deserves a lot of credit. I think he's arguably the most improved player of the last 18 months. Reached the final at Wimbledon, done very, very well. If he hadn't been up against Djokovic, he probably would have won his first Grand Slam tournament. reached the quarter-final of this US Open, and when you look at the likes of Stefanos Tsitsipas, who exited Wimbledon in the first round, who exited US Open in round 3, and he's third seed in the world. Baratini's Grand Slam results have been a lot better than Tsitsipas's recently. Baratini seems to be a lot more consistent. He's executing his weapons a lot better than some of the next-gen players who were tipped for bigger things than him. And 24, 25, the age that he is, he's got a little bit more experience now. His all-round game's improving. He's had some close matches with Djokovic. It's going to be a tough match, this one. Baratini's got the perfect weapons for a fast hard court. He's got the monster first serve, a hammer forehand, the defensive backhand, and the court coverage and the patience and consistency of Baratini is something that's improving a lot. I think one of the flaws in his game a few years ago was he had that bigger forehand. He just wanted to let it rip all the time, and I think he was attacking balls that weren't there to be attacked, trying to hit too many winners, sprawling the ball all over the place, making too many unforced errors. But I think Baratini is a player that backhand slice has really developed. It allows him to get good depth, to move inside the court, to get many short balls that he can attack. And when he lets rip in the forehand, it's arguably the hardest hitting shot in the entirety of the sport. And I think Baratini's got a better chance of beating Djokovic at US Open than he did at Wimbledon. And Baratini gave Djokovic a huge test at Wimbledon, obviously winning that opening set. So this, for me, could go either way. I do gonna go with Djokovic. I do think Djokovic will win. Probably 70-30 in his favour, just to the experience of Djokovic and the fact that he is chasing greatness, the fact that he has won 20 Grand Slams, and also the fact that Djokovic has played Baratini quite a lot recently. We know Baratini, what his main weapon is the serve. 95% of players don't get Baratini's serve back for very consistently, whereas Djokovic is the best returner of all time, so he sort of negates and neutralises Baratini's main strength. He makes Baratini play a lot more shots. He targets the Baratini backhand, keeps away from the forehand, does Djokovic. He knows how to beat Baratini now. He's done it the last few times, and I think Djokovic is very good at neutralising players' biggest weapons, and that's what you can do against Baratini. And I think although Baratini has improved over the last couple of years, his consistency, that the variety of Djokovic will be too much for Baratini to handle. So I'm going to go with Djokovic to win in 4 sets. Moving on now to Alexander Zverev against Lloyd Harris. Alexander Zverev is riding the wave of a fantastic 2021, beating Djokovic in Tokyo Olympic semi-finals to go on and win the gold medal. He's then backed that up to go on and win Cincinnati Masters, and I've often talked about Sasha Zverev, that I've thought he's had all the ability in the world, but just not perhaps had that mental strength or the biggest wins at majors to go on and really take authority in big moments. I've always felt he's passive on break point, he's passive on set points and tie breaks at 5-5, and back end of sets. I've always felt he's a little bit passive. He goes into his shell, he waits for errors from the big top opponents, and they just don't come. And I think he's learning that over time, that if he's up against a Djokovic or a team or a Federer or a Nadal, that he can't wait for errors to come his way. He's got to play his own game, believe in himself and attack. And he seems to be doing that, and it's bearing fruit. He's getting the results now, and he's a huge danger all in this tournament because of that. I'm still not sure he's the full complete 5-set player. I think he does have lulls in his game. The double fault is still a bit of an issue. When he gets tight in the forehand, it does seem to spoil errors. So I think in a 5-set match against the likes of Djokovic and Medvedev, who are very, very consistent and make few unforced errors in the big moments, he could come unstuck. But he's riding the wave of momentum, and he's winning matches. It's a perfect preparation to go into a Grand Slam by winning lots of matches, playing good, strong tennis. I wasn't massively impressed by his performance yesterday against Sinner. Them sets really could have went either way. Jannik Sinner, in my opinion, was very poor at the back end of sets 2 and 3. I thought he had Zverev on the ropes. I thought they were both there for him to win, but some of the shots he missed at the back end of both them sets were very, very poor. Routine volleys that he should never be missing. Had he took that 3rd set, it could have been very interesting, but Zverev battled through it, used that recent winning experience to maintain strong, get balls back in court, defend well, make the first serves, and that's what comes from winning experiences and winning titles. Moving on now to his opponent in Lloyd Harris, and I've watched quite a lot of Lloyd Harris this year, and he's had some immense wins, and he's a player that's much improved. He's beaten the likes of Stan Wawrinka, Nishikori, Karatsev, Shapovalov, and he's had his best run at a major in his career, reaching the quarter-final, and his movement and first serve percentage and the first serve percentage points won over the past 18 months has improved dramatically. He's pretty much cruised this quarter-final. I'm sure he'll have a huge confidence going into this one. The way he's been serving, hitting the forehand, a very aggressive play, likes to play on the fast hard courts, move inside the baseline, take the ball early. And I think this could be a very, very close match, closer than maybe's anticipated. I think we could see tie breaks. Both players are very, very strong on the first serves. Lloyd Harris has had a lot of big wins this year. I'm sure he'll not be fazed by playing Zverev. As I've said, he's pretty much cruised this tournament, so he should be there, fully fit and firing, ready to go. I think we've seen with Zverev in the past as well, when he's been a favourite in Grand Slam matches, he's often lost concentration during matches, and I'm not sure the favourite tag seems to be beneficial to Zverev in the big moments. If Harris can keep this close at 4-4s and 5-5s and tie breaks, then I wouldn't be surprised if he edged those big moments. And it's a difficult one to call because I've been so impressed with Harris over the past 18 months. I think he's a vastly improving player. He's only 24 years old. This tournament's been crazy. This could be the moment for him to really break through and gain that career-defining win. And that could see him, meet Djokovic or Baratini in the semi-final. I am just going to go with the recent winning form and back Zverev, but I think it's going to be a 5-set thriller, and I think if Harris could win, I'd kick myself in the prediction front because I was going to go with him, but I'm going to stick with Zverev, who's been in fantastic form and came through some sticky situations and beat some top players recently, which might just give him the slight edge. Moving on now to, for me, what is the best quarter-final on paper in Felix Auger-Aliassime against Carlos Alcaraz. And Auger-Aliassime is a player that, a couple of years ago as a teenager, I didn't sort of jump on the hype train. I thought he was a player with huge potential, but made far too many enforced errors. I didn't think he was getting as much out the first serve as he could. But with the introduction of Tony Nadal and a little bit of experience and maturity, I think Felix Auger-Aliassime's changed his game a lot. I think when he first came in the scene, he wanted to be this thrash, attacking, aggressive player inside the baseline and hit as many winners as possible and attack the net, which I don't think is his game style. I don't think that's the best of his weapons. I don't think he's the best of volleyers. I think it's certainly something that needs improving. For someone with his athleticism and speed, I think in serve, particularly serve out wide, I think he could become a very good serving volleyer, but his net play does need a lot of work. It's something that I don't think he's got too much execution or conviction around the net. He doesn't seem too confident when coming in. But Auger-Aliassime's a player that he strikes me more of a Djokovic type rather than a come forward type, and his defence and athleticism and the forehand is in particular very consistent, and he's got the ability to play it with a lot of top spin or a lot of pace, and I think that could really throw off Alcaraz in this one. His double-handed backhand as well is coming on leaps and bounds, and just his energy around the court, he gets the fans going. He's got a fantastic attitude, a huge smile which the fans always like to see, and you can see he loves the sport. He's just thoroughly entertaining to watch. But I think the defence and the variety in the forehand for Auger-Aliassime are his main weapons, and I think in this one the keys for Auger-Aliassime that he doesn't get caught in a firefight. Alcaraz is a player that likes to be inside the baseline. He crushes forehands and backhands. I think if Auger-Aliassime tries to match that by coming into the net and coming inside the baseline trying to fight with him, then I don't think Auger-Aliassime will win doing it that way. I think if Auger-Aliassime plays a little bit deeper, gets more balls back in court, uses a variety in the forehand to upset the rhythm of Alcaraz and force errors, then that could be his way forward of winning this match. But Carlos Alcaraz, what a story, what a player. I don't like to say and put pressure on these players, but if he's not world number one, in the next 5 or 6 years, and I'd be very, very surprised. The temperament that he's got, the all-round game, and the skill and the maturity and the way he handles big moments at 18 years old is just incredible to watch. His performance against Stefanos Tsitsipas is one of the best from a teenager I've seen in a Grand Slam for a long, long time. I think Stefanos Tsitsipas got caught exactly doing what I said auger-aliassime can't do, and get caught in a firefight, and I think people aren't quite expecting and anticipating the quality of the ground strokes that Alcaraz has got. The consistency, the pace, the depth, the speed of his ground strokes on forehand and backhand are quite incredible. On a fast hard court, if he can get a strong first serve in or a solid return and get a short ball, then he's going to win the points 90% of the time with the consistency, his net play, his conviction, his execution. It's just wonderful to see, and he's a player that handles the big moments. There's some sticky points in that match against Tsitsipas. He was a massive underdog. Tsitsipas has got way more experience than Alcaraz, and he bossed the big moments. He was far better than Tsitsipas, who crumbled at times in that match. And what a run it's been for Alcaraz. Another 5-set win in the previous round. Will he have fatigue issues? That's one thing to look at. I think auger-aliassime's had a slightly easier route, less time on court than Alcaraz, which could prove pivotal, but at just 18 years old in his first Grand Slam quarter final, I'm sure the momentum, the adrenaline of the match will drag him through, and this again is very, very tough to call. I haven't actually decided who I'm going to pick for this one. I think it will be a 5-setter. I am just going to go slightly with Carlos Alcaraz. I just think his demeanour and his ability to produce his best and the biggest moments is not something you'd usually associate and pick for an 18-year-old, but he just seems to be a different animal, almost like Rafa was when he was a kid, just fearless, almost thrives in the big moments. He wants to be in tie breaks, he wants to be at 5-5 because that's where he thrives, and his opponents often don't, but Alcaraz is just a special kid. The quality of his ground strokes is exceptional, and on a fast hard court, if you can paint the lines and find the forehands and backhands that he can, then you're going to be very difficult to stop. But if auger-aliassime can get their forehand going with the top spin and upset the rhythm of Alcaraz, but perhaps he will untangle the 18-year-old and put an end to what's been a fantastic run. But I'm going to go with Alcaraz to continue his fairy tale run and reach a Grand Slam semi-final, which would just be crazy. Finally, we're going to look at Zanshel against Daniel Medvedev. So Zanshel has played, I think, 7 rounds of matches to get to this stage after he came through qualifying, and what a story. Just 24 years old, Dutchman, obviously unseeded, have to come through 3 qualifying stages, as I just said. He has spent a lot of time on court, and I thought he looked shattered after the first set against Diego Schwartzman, but came through a 5-set thriller. To beat Diego Schwartzman, who's a vastly experienced player, very consistent, a top tenner, to come through a 5-set marathon against him just shows you the heart, desire, determination, the consistency of this kid. He's going to benefit hugely from this run, whatever happens from this Medvedev match. He's got very big weapons that are suited to hard courts. I've been very impressed with his forehand. His serve is a hammer, and yeah, he thoroughly deserved that win against Diego Schwartzman. I was surprised that he managed to power through, but I'm not sure how much he has got left in the legs, although he did prove me wrong against Schwartzman, as I mentioned in that previous round. Now, at the start of this tournament, I predicted Djokovic to win it, but if I was to be asked at this point who was going to win the tournament, it would be very, very close between Djokovic and Medvedev, because I've been so impressed with the Russians so far. Albeit he has had a very favourable draw, and it's now been blown wide open, his half, with the exits of Tsitsipas and Rublev. So, for Medvedev was to cruise to the final and then face, Djokovic or Zverev or Baratini, that could perhaps be a negative. The fact that he hasn't had an acid test, the fact he hasn't played a top opponent in preparation. But you couldn't be any more impressed with Daniel Medvedev. We know he's at home in these fast hard courts. He's reached the US Open final back in 2019. before reaching the Australian Open final in 2021. His counter-punching ability, his first serve, his court coverage, his ability to hit winners from defensive positions on the double-handed backhand and forehand is exceptional to watch. You know, the pace he develops, the way he redirects pace is incredible, but we've always known that with Medvedev over the past 2 or 3 years. But one thing I have seen that he's added to his game this year and I've been very impressed with is his ability to come inside the court. You know, I think Medvedev, with his counter-punching style, it's very effective over 3 sets, and in 3-set events then he's going to have lots of success. But in Grand Slams where he's playing, you know, 7 best-of-5 set matches, it's very difficult to maintain that style and keep executing it in the semi-finals and finals, which I think he's learned from those defeats in Grand Slam finals where he hasn't perhaps quite produced his best. You know, I thought he looked tired and not at his best at all in the 2021 Australian Open final against Djokovic, and he didn't really have any other variations or any other ways of winning points other than defending and counter-punching and dominating the long exchanges. One thing I've always felt that Medvedev has had to improve is his ability at the net and his ability to come in and finish points early, and that looks like it's something that he's doing. You know, might just because he's playing lesser opposition. He might revert back to type against Djokovic and try and play out a marathon 5-setter. But, you know, Medvedev's had success by moving inside the baseline and letting rip in the forehands and backhands. I still don't think he's at his best and perhaps has the most conviction and confidence at the net, but I do think he's improving in that department. Whether it will be good enough to beat the likes of Zverev and Djokovic is a question will remain to be seen. But the overall and all-round game of Daniel Medvedev has been mightily impressive this tournament so far. Yet to drop a set, playing fantastic tennis, and if he can cruise to the final unscathed, then, you know, he might even be a favourite depending on who he's against. I'm going to go with Medvedev to win this one in straight sets. I just think the serve and the counter punch and the consistency and ground strokes of Medvedev will be too much for Zanshel, who's had a fantastic run, but I'm not sure how much he's got left in the legs. I think if Medvedev can get an early lead and steal the opening set, then the writing would be on the wall. So I'm going to pick with Djokovic, Zverev, Alcaraz and Medvedev to reach the men's US Open 2021 semi-finals. Thank you for watching the video. If you do have any thoughts of your own, please leave them in the comment section below. I do enjoy reading those. I will be bringing lots more videos now out in the US Open previewing the semi-finals and finals on both the men's and women's side. So if you do want to watch those, do subscribe. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.